When you think of the Aztecs, what's the first image that pops into your head? For a lot of us, it's probably something, well, something pretty intense, maybe even a little terrifying. So let's dive in and really untangle that image, because it has a long and very complicated history.
And yeah, this is the stereotype, right? This one powerful idea that boils an entire complex culture down to a single brutal practice. The source material puts it bluntly. For many people, the Aztecs were cruel sacrificers. It's an image that has just stuck to them for centuries.
But is that really the whole story? Was this just some unique form of cruelty, or are we missing a huge piece of the puzzle here? That's exactly what we're going to figure out.
Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we need to zoom out. I mean, way out. Because the first thing you have to understand is that the Aztecs were far, far from alone in this. Now just look at this list. From ancient China and Neolithic Europe to the Mache people down in Peru and even the pharaohs of Egypt, evidence for human sacrifice is pretty much everywhere. It wasn't just some isolated thing. This was a deeply, deeply rooted practice across most of the ancient world. And this slide really hits that point home. While the methods were definitely different, the core idea was surprisingly common. The Aztecs are, of course, known for ritual heart extraction, but then you look at what some sources say about the Celts, caging people inside a giant statue made of wicker and setting it on fire. Whoa. The point isn't to compare who was more brutal, but to see that this kind of ritual killing was a global phenomenon.
All right, let's take this a step further. It wasn't just what people were doing. It was also about their gods. And across a ton of different cultures, the gods themselves could be, well, incredibly violent.
I mean, just think about the Greek gods for a second. These guys were the absolute masters of creative, eternal punishment. Prometheus chained to a rock so an eagle could eat his liver every single day. Sisyphus pushing that boulder forever. Tantalus forever hungry and thirsty. It's intense, and it just goes to show you the idea of these really powerful, scary, punishing gods was not unique at all.
And check this out. We can see this connection so clearly right here. On the left, you've got this incredible skull mask. That's the Aztec god of death, Mictlantecuhtli. But then on the right, you have Sekhmet, an Egyptian goddess of war who, according to myth, had to be tricked with beer that looked like blood to stop her from wiping out all of humanity. So again, these terrifying, destructive gods, totally not just an Aztec thing.
Okay, so with all that global context in mind, let's bring it back to the Aztecs. Because here's the thing. For them, this wasn't about being cruel. It was about something much, much bigger. It was about cosmic survival.
Their entire universe was built on this one creation story. First, the gods sacrificed themselves to create the world and the sun. But then, and this is the key part, the brand new sun just refuses to move. It basically says, nope, not moving until I get a sacrifice in return. And that created this sacred cosmic debt. Humankind's whole job, their entire purpose, was to pay that debt back, to feed the gods, to keep the sun moving and stop the world from ending. And this brings us to a super important word, next to Wilton. It translates to restitutions or payments. See, in their minds, a sacrifice wasn't a murder. It was a payment. It was the delivery of the most precious thing they had, human life, to literally keep the lights on for the entire universe.
Okay, so we understand their worldview. But what about the actual numbers we always hear about? This is where things get tricky, and we have to put on our detective hats and separate the archaeological facts from, well, historical propaganda.
You've probably heard a number like this one before, 80,400. That's how many people some Spanish colonial sources claim were sacrificed in a single ceremony. I mean, that's an insane number. And it was a number that was, let's be honest, pretty convenient for justifying the conquest. It painted the perfect picture of the cruel Aztec.
But now look at this number, 126. That's the total number of sacrificial victims that archaeologists have actually found after decades of digging at that exact same temple. The difference between those two numbers is it's huge, and it tells you that those historical accounts were probably, as our source puts it, wildly exaggerated. Now, this doesn't mean it didn't happen. Oh, it absolutely did. Just look at these incredible flint knives. This is the real physical proof. But having this evidence lets us study the real practice, the one grounded in archaeology, not the over-the-top version we read about in some of the old texts. So, where does all this leave us? How are we supposed to think about something so challenging? Well, the goal isn't to make excuses for it. The goal is to understand it. And honestly, I think the source material just nails it with this quote. We have to look at these practices beyond a simple good versus evil checklist.
The Aztecs were this incredibly complex society. They had amazing art, deep philosophy, unbelievable engineering. Their ritual violence, when you see it in its proper context, was just one part of what made them, well, what made them human, just like any other ancient people with all their own virtues and faults.
And that really brings us to the big takeaway here, doesn't it? That whole stereotype of the cruel Aztec, it wasn't just a story. It was used for centuries to justify real-world actions like conquest and colonization. It's a powerful reminder that the stories we tell about the past, they have real weight. They shape our present. And it really makes you think, what other stories that we take for granted might need a second look?